Welcome to War Room Pandemic. We're live from Capitol Hill. It's episode 12. We're on the John Fredericks Radio Network on America's Voice.News, the streaming platform for the Trump movement, the Trump revolution. Salem Broadcasting Radio, Newsmax TV across the nation. Episode 12. Dr. Stephen Hatfield and Jack Maxey are joining me. I think later in the show we're going to try to get Steve Cortez and Dr. Bradley Thayer talk about how the CCP is handling this. Steve Cortez to talk to us about the economy. But some breaking news. We had the show we're going to go through and talk about math and numbers, but I think this gets to the heart of it. As President Xi says, this virus is a demon, and we cannot allow this demon to hide. This virus is a demon, and we cannot allow this virus to hide. The one way we stop this demon from hiding is to get actual information about the scale of this problem. Why are we doing this show? What we did war room impeachment, which we'll probably be wrapping up this afternoon or tomorrow, the next couple of days. We said we were going to be on 7 days a week in impeachment, every day, 7 days a week, until the acquittal of Donald John Trump. And that the reason is we want to go all in on something we thought was not being covered, at least correctly, as a center in a war room situation where you can get opposition research, do analysis, et cetera. The same for pandemic. A couple of weeks ago, we just thought, given our knowledge of China and people that we know that know public health and know viruses and know these epidemics and pandemics, and we call it a pandemic. We call it pandemic rather than bad. And people are going, "Why are you calling it a pandemic?" It's not a pandemic. It's people catching the cold over in China. We said this thing's going to be big, and it's going to be big, and we know it's big because never before in human history have we ever tried to quarantine anywhere the range is 50 to 80 to 90 million people in central China. Now, it is definitely a pandemic because it is spread throughout the world. I think it's in 22 countries today. But most importantly, Tencent leaked today on the Taiwan news service picked it up. And this is about the demon cannot hide. If the demon can't hide, we got to have factual numbers. And these numbers that we're reporting out now really layer on and dovetail the numbers we've been talking about. So, Jack, first off, the official number, the official count and amount today, as the Chinese, the Communist Party is reporting it, how many sick? And by the way, the day before was the deadliest day. Then yesterday's the deadliest day. Every day is the deadliest day. You're seeing this thing grow by 18 or 20%. But what numbers are they reporting?
24,607 infected, 494 dead. And the difference between yesterday and today was 3,800 new infections. And 65 people died yesterday.
So we know, and we know this from social media, and we know this from word we're getting from people in country, is that the basically the public health system, as Dr. Hatfield projected on the very first show weeks ago, will eventually collapse in China. Will eventually collapse around Wuhan unless emergency measures are taken. We're going to get to that in a moment. But this is the official count. And every day we come on the official count, it's deadlier than the day before.
Yes.
But two very smart groups, and it's Lancet Media out of the United Kingdom, and they are probably one of the most renowned peer-reviewed journals in world medicine out of the UK, and also Dr. Gabriel Jung, I think I pronounced that correctly, from the University of Hong Kong, who's considered the virus hunter, one of the guys that was at the leading edge to stop SARS. Both of those have said differently, have come up with the same kind of number. And that number is roughly 150,000 people, give or take, have the disease and are infected. And there's anywhere from 20 to 25,000 dead. Now, last night or here just a little while ago, in the Taiwan news service in Taipei picked up that Tencent, there had been an inadvertent leak on Tencent. This is what they're reporting. And what does that leak tell us?
That leak told us that 154,023 are infected and 79,000 dead.
79,000 dead. Now, that's got to be verified, but that's the Taiwan news service is a legitimate, I mean, it's the AP of Taiwan. I've worked with the Taiwanese a lot. They are very legitimate, and this looks like it was an inadvertent leak in Taipei. Wow, I want to turn to Dr. Hatfield because you have been working on models and looking at this because you said something was concerning you. You've been very conservative about how you've looked at this, how you've reported this, and that one of the reasons with the show, we're doing the show is so there's not hysteria, but there's real information, real factual information. You've been one of the leaders of some of the guests we've had on, or some of the stories we've been putting up on the site about, hey, is this actual natural mutation, or is any way that this came out of the Wuhan lab? Because we don't believe in coincidences. And the Wuhan level 4 lab is inside of 20 miles from the wet market that this, the CCP's pushing this came from. Give us your assessment, because you've had concerns about where these numbers are going. You have tended to come down in the Dr. Jung and the Lancet media side. Mm-hmm. But what does this lead? Does this reaffirm what you think? Or you think that 79,000 number totally changes the mortality rate?
Can I inject here for 1 second?
Yeah.
I apologize. I'm reading the list of numbers incorrectly. 24,000.
That's what I thought.
I apologize. I read the number next to it by accident.
Okay, it's 20. That's what I thought. That's what it shows. So it basically dovetails onto the number we had, 154,000. That's what I thought, 24,000, which dovetails on Dr. Jung and dovetails on to Lancet. This is where you've kind of been going the last couple of days. You've been thinking, doing these calculations. What set of numbers are correct? Are the CCP's numbers correct, or is directionally Dr. Jung, Lancet, and now this leak from Tencent?
CCP numbers are not correct. They just don't make any sense.
Why don't they make any sense?
If you're looking at, they report a case fatality rate of 2.1. And if you look at their total infection numbers, things just don't add up. If you look at and compare that to the total death rate that they're admitting to. We've expected this virus to become more contagious as it learns how to replicate in man. This is what these things do.
What do you mean by that? As it learns, how can a virus is an inanimate object, right? Or maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe it's an animate object. But how can it learn? What does it learn?
It learns through random mutation, pulling the handle of the slot machine until it gets a jackpot. It's looking for a little mutation that will give it an advantage over all the other random mutations that are occurring in the environment of this virus. It's pulling the handle of the slot machine, and eventually it's going to find one. That then sort of becomes the dominant strain. We saw this in West Africa in 2014 with the Ebola virus. A single chemical change in the outer structure of the GP120 viral protein allowed it to spread more efficiently in that social environment. Now, the Chinese have initiated a massive social distancing.
Explain to our
program.
audience, and maybe just catching up, social distancing without a vaccine, and a vaccine is not on the horizon.
No.
Not close. You hear this thing every day, some guy in Australia, and people are like running around. A vaccine is not on the horizon.
I can tell you why.
Tell us why.
They've been working on one for SARS for a number of years now. And they had a candidate vaccine. They used a mouse model. They immunized the mice, let everything settle down, and then they challenged it with live virus. The mice all had a horrendous allergic reaction in their lungs. Their immune systems went haywire, over the top, and damaged the lungs. So, I mean, we're not even to the stage where you would attempt a human volunteer trial.
You think a vaccine here is years away?
It could be.
The shortest case for a vaccine. You think
It depends on how much money and how many people you want to devote to this.
Let's say a lot of money and a lot of people immediately.
6 months.
Okay, so in the 6 months, then this goes back to Dr. Jung. And Dr. Jung is Gabriel Jung at Hong Kong University,
But
was the first one. Go ahead, jump in.
We still have clinical trials to do in humans. So, do you see what I'm trying to say?
You got to speak. Can't you expedite that in a situation like this? Can't you? I thought President Trump, he had the ability to waive under emergency circumstances. You can waive things and do things. You don't have to do it by the FDA's nomenclature or protocol. You can do outside the protocol.
Anything involving human experiments, you don't get outside the protocol.
Got it. Let's go back to this RO number for a second. The 154,000. Lance has been saying this. Dr. Jung's been saying this. At the 24,000, in that calculation, how does that show you that the RO number, how the transmittability, is it increasing? Is it decreasing? What does this show you? What disturbs you about the 154 number if it's accurate?
No, I think the 154 number is quite reasonable. This is in line with and remember that Lancet article was back in January 28th, somewhere around there.
Dr. Jung's was about that time. Dr.
His
Jung's
was the Saturday before.
His was Saturday before. I mean, they've both been on top of this.
So we're coming up to the first doubling right now with today's date. What alarms me is the total case fatality rate.
If the 24,000 is correct.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
That kind of alarms me. I wasn't expecting something. I was expecting something in the 6,000 maybe.
Well,
Because of 24,000, correct me if I'm wrong, that's 15%?
That would be a much higher death rate.
But what's it, just the percentage? What's 24,154 is, just doing some math, is longer, is higher than that, 16, 17%, I think.
Yeah. This is
So
like
MERS
shocking.
was 50%.
30%.
Yeah,
let's
30%
say.
It's pushing like a 15%. But
Not bad.
Here's one thing to remember. Taiwan and China are in the midst of a major propaganda problem right now because China
Understand.
and the World Health Organization list Taiwan in this whole situation as a province, and they have not allowed any Taiwanese medical personnel to participate in this thing. So there's real issues right there.
But real issues, I understand they're in this war, but that was a leak that wasn't made for the Taiwan guys got their hands on it. Tencent, it was a data leak, right? So them to publish it, obviously they want to be in the CCP's face, but it's not like they made the Taiwanese did not make the number up. The number comes from somehow inside of Tencent, correct?
24,000 seems high to me.
Well, 24,000,
Does me too.
but 24,000 is what Lancet says, and 24,000 is basically isn't that what Dr. Yun says also implies? Or he doesn't
Well,
say that right yet.
To be fair, even the Taiwanese paper is not necessarily 100% behind
Exactly.
this rumor.
Understand.
They're sort of like, this happened and it may or may not be true, but certainly the overall number of infection is totally in line with what we have discovered from Lancet and other sources.
Let's go back to the CCP number, 24,000 every day. We're getting another, as they reported, another 3,800 with another 100 deaths. And you don't believe this number is accurate, but let's say this number was accurate. What would this tell you? Let's assume what the CCP is telling us is true. Okay, what would that set of numbers tell you?
And what number are they giving for total infections?
24,000 and about 400 some dead, almost 500 dead.
I just can't believe that.
No, but I'm saying, okay, I got that.
Well,
Hang on, I got that part. But I'm saying, if you assume that that's true, what does that tell you about the growth of the thing? Yesterday, it's basically 3,800 people a day infected and 100 people dead additionally every day for the last couple of days.
100 dead?
Yesterday,
100 dead
we had
yesterday.
65 people died.
Okay, we're still on the up peak of the graph,
Okay?
and eventually the graph will peak out.
This is running, you're saying social separation. Explain
Yeah.
to the audience, we have the biggest quarantine in human history happening in Wuhan. Your point is that best case, a vaccine 6 months away, okay? And you don't even see that happening, but best case. The only solution you have today is personal hygiene, but social separation. Social separation means stay inside, avoid crowds, do all that, and that's what, don't touch your eye. And what you do is, so that's the solution we have today. And the CCP, on a massive scale, is trying to put that into, particularly Wuhan. If you see the photographs from Wuhan, the other cities, they are ghost towns. If you see it in Beijing, which is a long way from Wuhan, but you assume that they get better information than the rubes out in the province, just like here in the United States, right? That Washington knows everything, everybody else doesn't know anything. That in Beijing, And Beijing's 35 million people, folks. And when I've gone there, it's jammed all the time. Ghost town. Don't see anybody. So social separation, they're doing it. Yet you're still seeing every day, as they're reporting it, 3,800 people and 100 dead.
now-
Does that, when you keep saying, you use this phrase, it's got to run its course. Dr. Jung said that, when it's got to run its course. Run its course means what?
The virus sweeps through the population until it finds a limit. Either there's the number of people that are susceptible are not around because they're either dead or staying indoors, or you have a herd immunity develop. So we're not to the herd immunity yet.
No.
So I would expect this thing, with the draconian measures they've initiated, to start leveling out. Now, as you level out, that doesn't put you out of the problem. That just drags the thing out longer.
Sort of like
But
the
a-
model in St. Louis.
Yes, the difference between Philadelphia in 1918 and St. Louis in Philadelphia in 1918. St. Louis initiated early, extensive social distancing measures. They had less total peak deaths at the height of the graph coming up, but it drug out for another month longer.
Right.
You're listening to War Room Pandemic, or are you watching War Room Pandemic? This is the special we do every day, 5 days a week, about this pandemic coming out of central China. Our guest is Dr. Stephen Hatfield. He's the author of 3 Seconds Until Midnight. It is a book that not only will you not put down, you won't sleep as you start to read it. It's equivalent. It's the nonfiction version of Stephen King's The Stand. It's a must-read. You can get it on Amazon. We're going to try to get it out there to more and more people. And Jack Maxey, who runs the data and the analytics side of our War Room site. Dr. Jung had said a couple weeks ago from Hong Kong University that, and he said the time he thought was 44,000, so his number would be 154 today, that this will double every 6.2 days, every 6.4 days. Right now, it looks like it's on track to do that doubling. And he said it would take until his analysis, and remember, he's one of the heroes of the SARS movement. And these Chinese doctors, by the way, are absolutely incredible. One of the first doctors who reported, it's on CNN. Please, we've got that story up on the War Room, link to it, but please go see that story on CNN where one of the first doctors who reported, who was pulled before the authorities and really threatened with jail, because what they do is they throw you in prison, right? He is now has the disease. He's in the hospital. He's putting up social media. He doesn't look in good shape either, and he's just an incredible hero. The one thing about the doubling, where do you cross the impact point where now we know that Wuhan is begging for medical supplies, right, on social media, that we know that the doctors and nurses, these heroes that are working 24 hours a day in hazmat suits, at just some point it starts to collapse, right? How far and how close do you think, and we know the PLA and the CCP and everybody are now fully concentrating on getting every resource in there to stop this demon virus. When does the public health infrastructure start to collapse in your idea? And then how does that exacerbate the run of the quote unquote run its course of the virus through the human population in China?
When you're talking public health structure and collapse, you're talking about losing your ability to do case contact tracing. That is, I have a sick patient. It's coronavirus positive. I need to go back and get a hold of everybody they've had close contact with and isolate them and test them. Labor intensive, time intensive. Above a certain point, you lose that ability, and Wuhan's lost its ability.
How do you know that?
Sheer numbers. Sheer numbers.
And to illustrate your point, Korea yesterday, talking about this case follow-up, they have a patient there that is tested positive, and it was unclear what his profession was, but they said the case follow-up was almost 1,600 individuals that this guy had come into contact with when he was infected. I mean, that overwhelms the system.
What we've got about a minute here before we got to go to break. U.S. authorities have put some measures in to limit people coming into the country until they're fully checked. I want to go back to the test. Dr. Fauci didn't really give people a strong sense that this test actually works. So in China, how do you actually test for this? How do they have a test when we say, and we only got a minute left? In fact, maybe let's hold that. But I want you to think about over the break. Dr. Fauci, one of the biggest wake-up calls of the press conference the other day is that even the test to designate this or diagnose it is not that accurate. In China today, I want you to put us in the room of how when these health systems reach a tipping point of collapse, because you said, hey, when you look at the United States, it all gets down to the local public health service. And when you have these big metropolitan areas that are essentially financially bankrupt, they haven't had, they can't take care of primary care, the whole public health thing gets all second, it's always second, third tier until that time when it's most important, and then you don't have the resources, you don't have the training, etc. Yep. Stephen K. Bannon, War Room Pandemic, Dr. Stephen Hatfield, one of the top biological researchers of viruses in the country from George Washington University, the author of 3 Seconds of Midnight, Jack Maxey. We're going to be back in just a moment.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Separating out the signal from the noise here on War Room Pandemic, Episode 12, joined by Dr. Stephen Hatfield, author of 3 Seconds Until Midnight, and Jack Maxey, who runs the War Room Pandemic day in and day out. I want to go back to these numbers for a second. The 154, if that's the infection rate, and we're just saying, hey, this is up on Taiwan News, which is the AP of Taiwan. It's about someone seeing this on Tencent. Did it leak or not? However, it does dovetail with what Lancet Media is saying. It does dovetail with what Dr. Jung saying, except maybe the death rate is different. If the 24,000 is correct, I don't want to stipulate if it's correct. What at the 154 is correct. So the CCP numbers are inaccurate, but this is, if you just for purposes of this conversation, just assume that's correct. What would that tell you about this virus in Wuhan?
Well, I would be extremely worried about it becoming more lethal. This can happen sometimes with virus, especially with these large numbers of people that have been. Remember, we explained, once you've got a certain amount of virus in an environment, they're all throwing random mutations, and they all want to be the number one strain. So randomly, if one of them throws a mutation and it happens to replicate quicker or some other advantageous feature, that is going to become the dominant strain that's circulating. 24,000 deaths. We were guessing with, it's been 2% case fatality rate. And there was a paper yesterday suggesting maybe 2.1. I'm not going to quibble about that. That's reasonable. And that would give us what?
6,000.
6,000, something like that. I would believe that. 24,000 out of 154.
Puts it up to a SARS-like kind of fatality rate.
Yeah,
and I
this
don't
is
think
not
that's
good
there.
at all.
Why would this not be as lethal as? Understand the difference between 2% and 15 or 16% is huge.
Yeah.
But why do you think that this would not be potentially at SARS? Or MERS was over 30%. SARS was 10%. Why would this not get to a SARS-like level?
It could.
Okay, but you sounded surprised. You said 2%. Why all of a sudden, when SARS is at 10, MERS is at 30, why this being somewhere north of 2?
I was thinking with the draconian social distancing measures that China initiated, that this would start to settle down.
But this is the question. This thing was known, and somebody was showing me some stuff last night. It would not officially enough to report, but maybe even from October. But let's say the patient zero was December 1st. This is, we know this in the there were 5 or 6 weeks that there was absolute complete denial. Maybe internally they were trying to do something, but complete denial, and even in the city of Wuhan, to the fact that the poor doctor was called before a tribunal. I think on December 30th, he was called before a tribunal at that time. So that's when this thing, and then you had at Wuhan, you had the city official that had the traditional, remember, for people here in the United States, they have Chinese New Year's, Lunar New Year's is such a huge, important aspect of this that you've got, they had the 10,000 families that come for 30 or 40,000 people. Everybody's eating out of the same bowl because that's the tradition that you have. You had these united things in there that could have taken this thing to the next level. Why does a mortality rate at that level surprise you?
It's outside the model. It doesn't surprise me. This thing can happen. But these social distancing measures should have had something to do.
We see the streets are abandoned.
Yeah.
We see the factories are shut down. Steve Cortez, in fact, is going to join us in a few minutes to talk about that, about the economic impact and when they'll be opening back up. You've seen whether they've shut down Macau, which, hey, for the Chinese to shut down the gaming during Golden Week, during the family thing, is a big deal. They've shut down the Forbidden City. They've shut down Shanghai Disneyland. They've shut down the Great Wall. They don't want people going anywhere where they're congregating. But outside of that, we see on the surface, how do you know it's being executed? Because you're seeing like a ghost town, so you assume everybody's in what about the 5 million that left? I mean, that's before. Remember, Wuhan is 14 million people. 5 million took off. Now, part of that was Golden Week, but part of that I think was, hey, I'm gonna get out of Dodge.
They've given them extra time to come home.
Yeah, they've blocked it.
They don't want
Let's
them.
talk about the mutations, though. What happened? And you're saying there's a situation. We're talking about Korea, about the virus.
In Korea, the real mutation, I think, though, occurred in southern China. And Steve and I were talking about this earlier. In one single family, the virus mutated 4 times. And this implies, as we were talking earlier, that this may be becoming maybe more virulent or
Not
more aggressive.
virulent, but more transmissible.
More transmissible.
What does that
yeah.
mean? Virulent means it kills you at a higher rate.
virulent means it kills.
I
So,
apologize.
transmissibility is what?
Person-to-person spread. Those two don't always go hand in hand. There's indications that 2014 Ebola that had one single mutation became more transmissible, but a bit less lethal. We didn't see the normal Ebola Zaire death rates strain.
Before we get to what we as a nation ought to be doing maybe more of for right now, put us in the room of these doctors and these nurses and these medical professionals. In fact, let's hold that for a second. I want to get Cortez to come in here and talk about the infrastructure, talk about what's going on, and then I want to come back. But I want you to put us in a room in a hazmat suit, taking care of. You've seen these things with hundreds of patients, just sitting in the thing. What is it like to medical professionals? How many days can you work 24 hours a day in a hazmat suit before it starts to collapse? Before we do that, Stephen Cortez is now joined us. Steve, people know Steve as on the Hispanic Advisory Committee and one of the leading voices for President Trump's reelection on his at the PAC, and also has a show on Salem Radio every night coming out of Chicago. But I know him as one of the smartest guys, hedge fund guys, and really a brilliant individual that understands not just the American economy in the stock market, but really how they link into the global economy. And particularly Cortez has been one of these people that really has a firm understanding of how globalization works and how China is inextricably linked into the American economy. So, Steve, thank you very much for joining us on War Room Pandemic.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
Normally, we would have you on the earlier show on impeachment to do about President Trump's beatdown, but on this show, we actually take on, we think, a world historical moment. And so far, we have not been proven wrong, although the American media and the business media, you wouldn't think. And this is what surprises me. We're talking here with Dr. Hatfield. We're seeing, these numbers that 10 cent, you know 10 cent very well, that they're being reported out of Taiwan. We can't verify if they're accurate or not. However, Cortez, as you stay on top of, you're a math guy, you stay on top of Lancet and you stay on top of Dr. Jung out of Hong Kong University. There's a certain similarity in the numbers. If those numbers are true, and just given what you're seeing today with the ghost towns, What impact is that going to have, first on the China economy, second on the world economy, third on America?
Right. Well, listen, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I think it's dire for all of the above, especially so for China. But we're not going to, unfortunately, escape unscathed out of this. I think there is way too much complacency out there, whether it's media, financial markets. I think it's important to realize this too, Steve, because I think a lot of your listeners probably think to themselves, well, listen, the leaders of Wall Street, the leaders of corporate America, they're on top of this. And if they're not worried, we shouldn't be worried. Except, let's just remember how often they get massive macro risks wrong, right? The housing crisis, the dot-com boom. So Wall Street and corporate boardrooms often do not at all see risks as they're becoming present, clear and present dangers to our prosperity in America. I unfortunately believe, listen, I hope I'm wrong, but I believe we're approaching one of those moments right now regarding China, not the health risk as much, but the economic risk to the United States, because we have, over the last 20 years, unfortunately, become utterly reliant on sourcing our goods out of China. And we should have never made this bargain with the devil, because what we got in the near term were cheap prices, right? But at what cost? At the long-term cost of, we have a supplier who, when they encounter a problem, and right now they're encountering a huge problem, a supplier who will lie, who will do anything to obfuscate, and there's a total lack of transparency. Now, long-term, Steve, I think this is going to lead back to onshoring, back to the United States, manufacturing here in our country, or at least in the Americas, among friends and allies. So long-term, there might be a fantastic silver lining. But near term, I see a really dark cloud that isn't getting enough attention right now.
Look, for our jump in here, but for our viewers, they think, hey, the smartest guys in the room, corporate America is brilliant in how they get stuff done, but the smartest guys in the room are the hedge fund guys. They are the guys that drive the city of London and Wall Street. And remember, they're told every day that the stock market looks forward. Right, it's the present value of kind of forward expectations. How have you and I completely missed it, or others are sitting there going, "Hey, these factories, they're not coming back next week after Golden Week." In fact, I think it was you that brought to my attention, they've canceled. They have this major conference, right? That's at the end of March, right, or at the end of April. They've already canceled it, and they haven't. This conference is one of their globalization conferences, one of the biggest business conferences of the year between government officials and world business leaders. It's kind of like the Davos of China, right?
Correct.
They announced the other day, canceled. It's at the end of March, so it's not like tomorrow. It's the end of March, and no date to reset. I mean, these are the types of tells that show you they don't think people are coming back to work next week. In fact, the word they're putting out is just to shut down the casinos and everybody stay home.
Right. And listen, Ivy, also to your point about, the smartest people. And look, there are massively, insanely intelligent people running hedge funds. Absolutely. But again, let's remember that doesn't mean that as a group, their collective wisdom is always right. I would point to probably a lot of the listeners and viewers have seen the movie The Big Short, which is a great movie. And it really explains some really arcane and sort of technical aspects of the bond market in a way that's really entertaining and that the layman can grasp. Well, in the case of the housing crisis, there was a very small group of people and a really peculiar group of people, which is why it made it an entertaining movie, who saw those risks way before Wall Street saw it, way before the supposed experts and geniuses saw it. So I think we have to be aware that we could be in a similar situation right now with China, where the best and brightest are unwilling or unable to see, or some combination of the two, unable to see what's going on in China. But perhaps it's because they've invested so much in China, right? So there's a thing called confirmation bias here, right? Where because they want it to be true, because they wish it to be true, they will act as if it's true and reject data that argues the other way, data like the Tencent leak, assuming that that's accurate. It sure seems like it is, because also, Steve, it's important to know Tencent didn't just do that once. They've done it several times now, where they release numbers that are far higher than the official stats, and then they're quickly corrected. So what I believe is going on there is their programming, their coding just automatically uploads numbers, and then a human comes in and says, "Oh, wait a second, that's not the party line." I think also, Steve, it's important for us to think about the Chinese Communist Party. Just in terms of what's in their interest, right? It's not the interest of the Chinese people. It's the power of the Chinese Communist Party. And I believe they will do literally anything to try to maintain that power. And if you start from that premise sort of foundationally, then you really have to doubt everything they tell us about this coronavirus.
Let me go back to a second to the interlinking nature of the global economy. The coupling that you see is that even in Japan and South Korea, and obviously the United States and Canada, Mexico, you're seeing this whole issue of, hey, people understand, oh, well, they make the finished goods and they ship it. There are so many component parts that then come in, and then you can actually do the final assembly in Japan or in the United States, in Mexico. That is the component parts that look, they ship essentially $600 billion of manufactured product to the United States every year. We ship them back about $100,000 of essentially, natural gas, pork, et cetera. That's why we're kind of a tributary state, correct? We don't really do much high value manufacturing anymore.
No, exactly. Unfortunately, we're sort of almost a farm for China, and I hate to say that.
No, it's 100%. It's 100% correct.
Yeah, but that's the situation we've allowed ourselves to be put in. We should have never allowed that, but that is the reality. You're exactly right. At present day, we get largely value-added goods. Also, a lot of cheap goods, just toys and so forth for Walmart, but then also a lot of value-add components. We send back basically a lot of raw materials. So in some ways, we're
in your understanding too of these component pieces. Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't most of the chip design, basic chip design, and now even advanced chip design, all done essentially in China?
That's right. And by the way, the reason they were able to really sort of leapfrog other countries, including the United States, Taiwan, and sort of occupy that pole position of design, though, is not because they worked hard and earned it, Steve. It's largely because they stole it, which is the Chinese, unfortunately, largely the Chinese model for competing with the United States and competing with the world is, whatever you can innovate, you can steal. And that has largely been what the Chinese Communist Party has done. But, here's another thing. I actually just posted on my Twitter this morning a story about Apple. Apple has been trying well before this coronavirus. They know they have a China problem. And what I mean by that is because they get so many components for China and they can't rely on China, they've been trying to move to shift their sourcing away from China. A lot of the Western companies have, even before this virus. Now, given this situation, I think that transformation is going to massively accelerate. And again, long term, I think this could actually be great for the United States, great for manufacturing, design here. I think we will finally have to come to terms, again, with this trading partner who's not a partner, right? Who abuses us, who doesn't tell the truth, who abuses its own people, who abuses American workers. And unfortunately, sometimes it takes a crisis to awaken a country like ours up to the reality on the ground in China.
Steve, before we let you go, this last thing is you see it now because some people dismiss it, oh, it's going to be 0.2% impact in the first quarter. And my response is, yeah, we're not talking about the first quarter. Right? This is logistics.
Exactly.
Where do you see the bow wave of this thing? As you see it today, given your analysis, where do you see the bow wave starting to affect the global and the American economy?
Right. No, exactly. I think it's a second quarter issue because if the factories are not really opening next week, and we know right now that 80% of China's exports regions are right now under quarantine. I mean, that's just a massive number, right? And people try to compare it to SARS, and that's often how they try to say that this won't be a big issue. In the days of SARS, China was not yet a consequential supplier to the West, right? Its GDP is now 4 times bigger as a percentage of global GDP. It's massively more interlinked with the United States. So I don't think SARS comparisons hold water, in my view. And this, I think, for the second quarter, starting March, April, May, I think that we're going to have, unfortunately, again, look, hope I'm wrong here, Steve, but I really don't think I am. I think we're going to have massive disruptions in the global supply chain.
So, Cortez, when did Wall Street start giving guidance, that downgrade guidance? Wouldn't that be the early tell when they got to come forward and say, hey, we gave you a projection for 2020 of this, but because of China, we're taking guidance down? When do you think that starts?
I think we'll see that. My guess, again, is probably in March when it becomes more evident. But unfortunately, too, Wall Street often is very late to the party when it comes to those kinds of issues. So, I think the reality on the ground is already starting to hit now. I think we'll probably see it in financial markets and in Wall Street, sort of statements, and Wall Street's biases and posture is probably a spring issue for America.
Okay, how do people get more access? Tell us about the show. Tell us about how they get to your Twitter, all that, because you're on fire right now, sir.
Yeah, thank you. So listen, at Cortez Steve, Cortez with an S, so 2 S's together, is my Twitter account. The Steve Cortez Show is Central Time, 5 to 7 p.m., afternoon drive every day on Salem Radio. If you're not in the Chicago area, it does stream every day. We've been on this coronavirus issue early and often. We've had on a lot of fantastic guests, and we're going to continue to cover it. That's part of what I really am trying to do on this show is cover the issues that aren't getting covered by corporate media because they're always late to the party when it comes to important issues, and they're often too colored by their bias. And so, we're not going to do that on the Steve Cortez Show.
We look for your piece tomorrow. We'll have it up on the site. Steve Cortez, thank you very much for joining us from Chicago today. I want to go back to Doctor about Steve Cortez talked about the reality on the ground, on the factories and the logistics change. I want to go back. We got a couple minutes left in the show. The reality on the ground of professionals. You've spent your life in this area. The professionals now, they're at the tip of the spear in these hospitals, at these centers right now. They just built in 10 days 2 centers. At 2 new hospitals, quarantine hospitals in Wuhan, the CCP did, the Chinese Communist Party. Put us in the room. How tough is it for professionals to do this day in and day out?
You can do it for about 48 hours. And then
In a hazmat suit.
then you've had enough. At the same time, you make one mistake with your PPE, you're dealing with high viral loads in patients, contaminated bedding, this type of thing. One mistake.
One tiny mistake. And what happens?
You run the risk of getting infected yourself.
There's been reports that doctors and nurses are getting infected, right? We got this hero that happened, Jack.
There are, and if you look in Hong Kong, 5,000 medical workers walked off the job yesterday, and they are in a big fight with Carrie Lam, the head of Hong Kong, because they want the borders entirely closed. Now, she says, and this goes back to why it's so dangerous to have these multinational kind of extra governmental agencies define your own practices. She says, I will not shut the borders until the World Health Organization tells me to.
Let's go to that. We got about a minute left. Doctor, the World Health Organization, what job have they done so far, and what should they do now going forward?
I think the job they've done so far is the square root of nothing, quite frankly, except delay everything, bow to CCP, obviously, pressure. They did nothing in Ebola until it was just.
Why is this? People look to the we look to the CDC, but through the world and the media looks to the World Health Organization. Why is it so kind of pathetic? Is it the politics of it? Is it the funding of it? Or is it just the personnel? Are they not?
They're dependent, for funding, they're depending on their signatory nations.
And so China is
Right.
the number two.
We give about 250, and they give about 125.
But we're
million a
number
year.
1, they're number 2, correct? And this is why they've kowtowed. Do you believe they made a mistake in not calling this an emergency when they had the
course.
opportunity?
Of course. They're the ones that really contributed to the West Africa Ebola getting out of control.
Okay, we're going to tomorrow. We're going to get more into the details of this. We're going to ascertain whether these numbers, shocking numbers coming out of Taiwan today, a leak. But as Steve Cortez said, this is the 3rd or 4th time Tencent has done this. It dovetails with Lancet Media and Dr. Jung at Hong Kong University are saying that the actual number infected here is 150,000, much more than the 30,000 that's being reported right now.
24,000.
24,000
now.
reported on the. By the Chinese Communist Party. Also, all the discussion, we're going to bring an update tomorrow about the infrastructure inside China, trying to do something that's never been done in human history. Social separation on a scale never seen before. 50, 60, 70, 80, 100 million people in central China, and what impact that's going to have on the global supply chain, what impact that's going to have on the whole global economy, this interlinked economy that we have, really the manufacturing base and the logistics base comes out of China. Stephen K. Bannon, Dr. Stephen Hatfield, the author of 3 Seconds Until Midnight, and Jack Maxey. We'll see you tomorrow morning.